This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
And welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night, so call in your questions on any legal topic. If you've got a problem, you've had a car accident or a little run-in the past week, or you've got concerns about a family member in nursing home care and have legal questions, call in or text us. You call in 31's Law Call numbers 256-536-0077. You can also text us to that same number. You can also email questions. You can send any legal question any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we pull some out. We've got some of your email questions tonight. We've also got Heath Brooks from Timberlake, League & Brooks with us tonight to answer questions.
We're an open book tonight. Ask us anything.
Call in or text in. We've got some video to get us started. We've got tonight's You Make the Law Call video, and Heath hasn't even seen this one yet. And I was asking about motorcycle wrecks. Okay, this is a guy on a motorcycle, and at first it kind of looks like a video game, but this, he just seems to be so reckless. You almost question, was this a setup? Because there is going to come a point, now he survives this, but I want to know how the system works when you've got a video like this and it almost seems like you're being reckless. Okay, that did not end well.
No.
Okay, motorcycle accidents. And when you see something like this, you guys handle motorcycle accidents and try cases with motorcycle accidents.
Yeah.
What are you looking out for with something like this?
You know, they can be devastating sort of collisions. Obviously, you're on a motorcycle, you don't have a lot of protection. You have the protection of a helmet, but everything else is out there. You could be thrown from your motorcycle on the street. People don't pay attention to motorcycles, unfortunately. You know, so I look at one of these videos and I see this motorcyclist traveling very quickly down, looks like an interstate, and then there's a traffic stopped in front of them. Maybe somebody moved out into his path. But in Alabama, we have something called contributory negligence. And if you contribute to your own injury, even 0.01%, you cannot recover a penny. So even if somebody does move out in front of you while you're traveling too fast, most of the time a jury is going to find against you on a contributory negligence argument. And that's the real problem in Alabama. That's why it's essential when you have a case and maybe you were driving a little too fast, or before you talk to an insurance company, you need to contact a lawyer, because a lot of times insurance companies really want to start talking to you about how fast you were going, where you were looking, those kinds of things, so they can get an I gotcha in Alabama.
And they probably recorded it?
They do.
Probably.
Record, but in that particular scenario, I think that, you know, you're on a motorcycle, you're driving quick, people, you know, and it's just, my experience has been a lot of times people on a jury just think that, hey, you're getting on a motorcycle and you're putting your life at risk. I don't really think that. I got a lot of good friends that were that are on motorcycles, and I myself grew up riding on motorcycles. So, you know, it's one of those things that we all got to watch out for them, but motorcycle riders also have a responsibility to follow all the traffic laws as well.
So is it your experience that even if he'd been following all the rules of the road, in Alabama, juries don't like those kind of cases? They don't they don't pay out very much.
Sometimes they're very hesitant when there's a motorcycle case. Of course, we try them regularly, and that's one of those things that you know, that is a challenge. It really is.
They think you're taking a risk as it is.
That's right.
We got an email question in. This one is from Wes. Wes had written in, my girlfriend is being sexually harassed at work by her supervisor. He hugs her and he's grabbed her butt. She receives suggestive texts from him. What can she do that won't result in her getting fired? There's no HR department and her supervisor has worked there for a long time. Okay, we know it's not right. And at least he's got something in writing here, or she's got something in writing here. He's got some text that back her up to show what we're talking about.
It's potentially criminal and definitely civil kind of situation, and probably both. But the first thing she needs to do is, if her supervisor has a supervisor, she needs to contact the supervisor. Second thing she needs to do is contact the lawyer. And then there are various organizations. That's the various law firms that do handle those types of sexual harassment cases in the workplace. And obviously, it can't be tolerated. You know, that's a violation, a constitutional violation for you to be doing that. And so the first thing you would want to do is you want to contact as high as you can get up the ladder, make sure that they're aware of what the situation is, and then after that, contact an attorney.
We've got callers. We've got Marie on the line with a question from Town Creek. Hi, Marie. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Yes. My husband passed, but he did not have a will, and I wanted to know could my property be sold?
Okay. No will. Her husband passed away, and there's no will.
Marie, do you have did you own a house with your husband together?
We own a house, but my name wasn't on anything.
Okay.
Okay. So whenever you pass away and you don't have a will, the first thing that you need to know, Marie, is that you can have your husband's estate probated. And the way that you would do that is you would go and you would file, and this is something you may need a lawyer to help handle for you, but you would file as a personal representative of the estate of your husband, which would likely be, you would be the person who would be in that role. And after that, the property that you own jointly with your husband would pass based upon the law of the fancy legal term is intestate succession in the state of Alabama. So a certain amount would go to you immediately, and then there's another percentage after that if you and your husband had any heirs, if y'all had any children, would be passed to your children. So it's a topic that you most likely need to contact a lawyer about. But the other side of that is that if you owned property with your husband jointly, you need to look at your deed, because most of the time, if you own property with a significant other, then you may not even have to probate your property. It may be called, you may have what's called joint tenancy with the right of survivorship, which means as soon as your husband passed away, whatever you own jointly, his percentage passed to you. So be sure to check the deeds on your property, and then if you need to probate estate, contact an estate lawyer, get set up as a personal representative, and then you can move forward. Sorry for the loss of your husband.
Yes. We got a text question. Somebody's talking about they're mowing the yard at a rental property. They rent the place and they're cutting their yard,
sure,
and they fell through the septic tank hole. Is the landlord responsible for their injury?
You know, it's covered under landlord-tenant law in the state of Alabama, and every state has a different landlord-tenant law. Alabama's is generally going to benefit the landlord. There are very few situations where a landlord can be responsible if a tenant gets hurt on a property they are renting. I think that may fall in one of them. The first one is if a landlord undertakes a repair. In other words, they come in, they replace a fan, and the fan falls on you and causes an injury because of something that the landlord did improperly, then the landlord could be responsible. They failed and were negligent in a repair. The second thing is if the landlord is aware of or should be aware of a latent defect. And what a latent defect means is that it's a hole in the, as an example, a hole in the ground the landlord knows about and only the landlord can know about, and the tenant doesn't know, and the landlord should have warned them. The best example is one of those old wells in the backyard, you know,
yeah,
that was dug a long time, and the landlord may have covered it up with some old cross ties and leaves and whatnot, and then a tenant falls into the, yep, well and gets injured. Same sort of story. Gotcha. So it's very potential that if the landlord knew about this septic tank, knew it was there, wasn't using it anymore, tenant falls into it, the landlord can be responsible.
Okay, got a roofing question. We've had so many storms lately, yeah, and lots of roofing problems. So somebody had a new metal roof put on in 2023. The heat and everything going on, it looks like she's having some mold problems coming in. Thank you, Vicki, for your text question. Mold. So she's contacted the roofer, and they said, no, it's just fine. But other people have viewed it, and they said there's a problem with the ventilation. Can she sue the original roofer?
So, you know, here's the thing. Whenever you do a roof, there's a particular contract. There's a couple of different things. What's in your contract with the roofer? In other words, what sort of warranty did they provide you? What materials they provided you? And I'm kind of taking my lawyer hat off and putting my construction hat on. But whenever you put a new roof on a house, it's got to be properly vented. And that's a common problem sometimes with roofing jobs. They'll come in, they'll remove the old roof, they'll remove where the vent pipes were venting the attic space, and then roof over the top of it without creating any more ventilation. The air is not allowed to get, because your attic is not heated and cooled. Yeah. It's not air conditioned, so it builds up moisture. That moisture can't escape. It's kept inside, and then all of a sudden you have mold build, yep, up. So one of the other things that a roofer has to do is they have to be a good workman. They have to have a good level of workmanship. And if they don't, and if they do something improperly, then the roofer can be responsible. There are time limitations, though, on an implied warranty of merchantability. That's the legal term for it. So it's essential that if you wanted to bring an action against a roofer, contact a lawyer immediately, because your time limitation generally is 2 years, but if it's a breach of contract, it can be 6 years. So you have some leeway, but it's something that with time limitations like that, it is essential that you contact somebody. Roofing can be expensive in this day and age.
Yeah, it can.
Everything's going up in cost.
Yeah.
Metal costs a lot more than it used to.
And this was in 2023,
Yeah.
so she may be right on her time limit.
So be careful there.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. It's Ask Us Anything Night, so call in.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi. And hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back tonight. It's Ask Us Anything Night. So call in your questions. The 31 Law Call number 536-0077. Heath Brooks is with us tonight answering things. And we've got Donnie on the line with a question from Muscle Shoals. Hi, Donnie. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
I got a question about land taxes. My mother, she's 97, in a nursing home, owns a house and still has to pay land taxes.
Okay.
I'm wondering, I'm totally disabled. Is it any way for me to take possession of the house or anything to keep from paying the land taxes?
Well, it depends upon your. There are some exemptions for land taxes that you can make, and it's going to be depending upon the county. And I guess you would be over in Colbert County or Lauderdale County. So, but it's going to be dependent upon. What specifically the county allows for exemptions. Sometimes the state will allow some certain exemptions. For instance, if you're a disabled veteran, sometimes you can get an exemption for being a disabled veteran if your mother transfers a property. You got to be careful though about. I don't know what kind of health your mother is in, but you got to be careful about transferring property if your mother is if that's her only asset, because sometimes if she ends up going on Medicaid or something like that, that can get kind of weird. But yeah, that's one of those things you probably want to contact an estate lawyer that handles property issues and see if that could be viable for you. There are, and you can also sometimes have your whatever the property taxes are on the property. Sometimes you can petition the county to reevaluate the property to get the taxes a little lower as well.
This is kind of a follow-up to the Marie question at the top of the show. So we got in a text question. My mother had land before she was married. She passed with no will, just like we had with Marie's situation before. Is her husband entitled to get part of this land, or will it go to the kids?
Well, it depends upon what the assets of the estate are. There's a widow's share. If it is an intestate, meaning you don't have a will, there's a widow's share that goes to the spouse first, and then after that, I think it's the first $50,000 goes to the spouse, and then after that, $50,000 in cash or goods or real estate or personal property. Then half of the rest of the residual estate goes to the heirs, and the other half goes to the spouse. So the question is that maybe you get to keep the land all as the spouse, or maybe there is some of it that is split amongst the children. The big thing is look at your deed, because most of the time land does not pass, particularly if it's owned in a marriage, land does not pass with the estate. It passes outside of the estate with joint tenancy with a right of survivorship. We've
got Howie on the line with a question from Huntsville. Hi, Howie. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Yeah, hi. I bought a house at a sheriff's sale a few months ago, and I want to know if I can lawfully deed that house to someone else, even though the right of redemption is still outstanding. And if I do, and the former owner wants to redeem, Do they redeem it for me, or do they redeem it to the person I conveyed the house to?
Interesting.
Well, you could always, I don't know about it, I don't think that you'd be able to deed it with a warranty deed, because you would have to have clear title at that point in time, and you're not going to be able to get a title insurance company that would provide you with title insurance for the purposes of a warranty deed. But you could quit claim whatever interest you may have in the property to someone else, if you can find someone who would be willing to do that. And quit claim is just another way of transferring property, which is basically whatever interest you have. Of course, if I could quit claim Sharon here whatever interest I may have in some property over in Fulton County, Georgia, even if I didn't have any interest in it at all.
And I got nothing.
And you got a piece of paper.
I got 100%
So, I mean,
of nothing.
there is a way to deed whatever interest you may have. But in terms of the redemption, that I think that the redemption would have to go through whoever you quit claim whatever interest you may have.
Got a text question in. Okay, so he says, my buddy was driving a car back. A deer ran out in front of him and he got hurt. The customer, so I don't know if it's a repairman that's driving the vehicle, has insurance on the car. Who's going to be responsible? The customer gave him permission to drive the car. Okay, can you make sense out of it?
Well,
so driving a car and it's not your car and you hit a deer.
Yeah, I mean, that's first off, if you're driving a customer's car with that customer's permission, then you are a permissive driver of that vehicle. And that means that whatever coverage is on the car will transfer to you. You are actually becoming the insured. And so your option at that point in time is you have, if you hit a deer, we can't blame the deer. The deer is not going to be responsible. Deer doesn't have any insurance.
You're not going to collect.
They're not going to be able to collect. So, but what your buddy may be able to collect is, if he was injured, he could get medical payments coverage, which is a type of health insurance coverage that sometimes people purchase through their car insurance company, and he may be entitled to get some medical bills paid back, and then also repairing the vehicle. So, there would be, if there was collision coverage on the vehicle or comprehensive coverage on the vehicle, then that could be utilized to repair for the vehicle, because that kind of coverage, it doesn't matter whether the deer is at fault or whether someone else is at fault, it will pay to have the vehicle repaired.
Okay, this may be kind of similar. Gabby wrote in an email question. She says, does car wreck insurance cover any damaged property that was inside the car?
The answer to that is yes, it can. When you get into a car wreck and you have, and this type of coverage can be depending upon who's at fault. If it's a person who hit you or caused the wreck, their insurance coverage can pay for property that's in the vehicle. And then if you have collision coverage, then there could be some coverage for you for some property that is in the vehicle. But generally what you want to look towards is, if you are not at fault and someone else is at fault, anything that is lost in the vehicle for property, if your cell phone gets broken, if your car seat gets broken, those kinds of things are part of a claim that you can make to the person, to the person's insurance company who was responsible for the wreck. And we oftentimes we do that. That's one of those things that I'm cheap. I pick a penny up on tails.
Yeah, sure.
Not superstitious, and it's one of those things that you want to make sure you check all the boxes. I mean, the car seats are expensive now.
Everything in
car
there.
seats, cell phones.
Yes.
Back in the day, and I'm dating myself, CDs. CDs break. So,
every $10.
Yeah, that's right.
We got Mark on the line with a question from Fort Payne. Hi, Mark. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
My question is, we have a neighbor, and he lives down from us, and he asked if he could mow adjacent to his home on our side of the property for about 3 feet.
Okay.
To be even with his property, and we said yes last year, but could he claim that property by mowing that?
Gotcha.
Well, what you're talking about is a very, 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 very ancient legal principle called adverse possession. And the answer to that question is no. He likely can't claim that property just merely by mowing it. What he would have to do in that kind of scenario is he'd have to say, look, this is going to be my property now. He is actively taking over ownership of that property. He puts up a fence. He maintains it after that. You are excluded from the property, and you just kind of let it happen for 10 years. Then he may be entitled to the title of that property. But just letting the neighbor mow, 3 feet of the grass, that's not going to lead to an adverse possession situation.
We got in a text question. Recently had a family member that went into the funeral home and made all of her arrangements. I guess she paid for it, and then she passed 2 weeks later. The funeral home's coming back and saying that they made a $1,600, $1,700 mistake. They're wanting more money. If she's already signed a contract and things with the funeral home, she's prepaid, can they hold the funeral home to that deal?
Yes, they can.
Okay, good.
Those are the four corners of a contract. I mean, once you have a contract with somebody, you made a mistake. I mean, that you got to make sure before you make a contract with somebody that it's right, and particularly when you're the business owner. I mean, if it's a situation where you're the less knowledgeable party. Maybe you're the lady who passed away 2 weeks later, the less knowledgeable party, then you may have an argument to say, look, I didn't understand this. And there are some situations where that would apply. But if you're the business owner, you're in the business of selling funeral products, you're in the business of selling coffins, you're in the business of setting up funeral arrangements, and you're going to claim after somebody else passed away that the contract was wrong and you made the mistake, that's going to be a pretty tough sell.
Yeah.
And I would think that you'd have a pretty good legal argument that you don't owe that $1,650.
We're going to take a break. Be right back answering more of your questions. It's Ask Us Anything night. Stay with us. If we haven't gotten your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with Heath Brooks with Timberlake League and Brooks, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And Sharon does all sorts of family law. That's divorces, child custody sort of situations. If you want to reach her, she can be reached at 256-539-7337 or www.sharonfamilylaw.com.
So we got a text question in from Blake. Blake says, is it considered sexual assault if inappropriate text messages are sent after work when everybody's at home?
Generally, that would be considered sexual harassment, not sexual assault. Okay. Sexual assault requires a touching. So if you're sending inappropriate text messages on the phone, that's a situation where that could be considered sexual harassment.
I think this still gets you in trouble at work, right?
It will definitely get you in trouble at work.
Sending that to coworkers, don't do that.
It is not something you should do, not advised, but likely would not be considered sexual assault.
Thanks for all your questions. We'll see you next week.